Serge, you're the founder of Universal Medicine. What is Universal Medicine?
Rebecca, Universal Medicine is two words that have come together that are universal in their meaning and medicinal to humanity, to the point that one day we will discover that medicine plays a huge role in our evolution, but it has to play a role in it from a universal point of view. But universal medicine brings in a new form of science, a new form of religion, a new form of philosophy, and a new form of medicine, a new form of healing, a new form of understanding relationships, a new form of education. But when I use the word new, I'm only saying it from the point of view of how we've become wayward from where it used to be. So in effect, none of what universal medicine presents is new. It's actually ancient, and it's actually our origin. So I use the word new only simply because what we've accepted as the norm has been for too long the deviation away from our truths, and therefore it may seem to many new, but in effect it's not new at all.
So practically speaking, it's also a business. And how then do you bring in such broad concepts to humanity as religion, science and medicine under the business Universal Medicine? What does that look like practically?
Well, it's a good thing it's a business, because then people will understand and study one day the way in which it operated as a business. So we could say that a word I didn't use in that first description, that it's also a new way of doing business, in the sense that its generosity doesn't have to be highlighted in neon lights and spread everywhere because a business is being generous. It's in the business of producing evolution and equalizing everybody where there is no leader as such, but everybody is leading the way. So it's also a completely different way of doing business. It's not communist or capitalist, it's just a completely different version of doing business that is introducing it to the world. Why is it a business? It needed to be a business for it to be taken seriously, and for people to also learn that they've been using money to hurt themselves for a very, very long time. We don't think of spending money at, and I won't name the places, but at a food store or in a particular book or at a course or in education. And did that really produce us in a healing way? Did it really produce medicine? Did it produce true love or not? So we need to understand that money represents kidney energy or life force, and we have to redirect that life force towards something that is truly going to bring us some form of healing and love. And so it's also educating humanity that there is a smart way or a wise way to focus one's flow of money. And also it shows that money is not the root of all evil, it's how we use it that is not so nice.
I recall my father many years ago, or maybe a bit over 5 years ago, he did the maths of how much money he spent per week on wine and beer. And it was extraordinary, and it was like that was a figure that didn't exist until he actually acknowledged that money and that energy was going towards self-harm, essentially. And so when people look at, say, how much money he might spend on a workshop which delivers him a form of evolution and a feeling of change in his life and vitality that really supports him, it's very curious to see how critical people are of people asking for money for those kind of services, when the services that do us the most harm seem to go over the radar. And there's a belief that I'd like to break down, and that is that the healer or the philosopher should be a kind of barefoot guy, maybe walking on the streets of Byron in some coloured robes and giving out his love and wisdom for free.
And the healer's not allowed to drive an Audi car, they have to ride in a donkey. So we need to understand that we need to break that paradigm, that the true healer needs to be of a poverty mentality and not charge. But we're talking about a system of business, and I've always said God is business, and part of being divine is being in business. If you understand how the order of the universe works, it's in business with itself, it's in business with each other. It's a constant exchange, it's a cooperation, it's a system of economy. Okay, so it doesn't have money, but it's still a system of economy on the basis that it's trading vibration and light and energy. So we can replicate that here and have a system of economy that definitely has a trade and a trading commodity, but we need to understand that it needs to be cohesive, collective, and evolutionary. And so if we have a system of products that harm us, why not learn to put money into something that is going to be healing? And that way we understand how to best use our energy, how to best use our effort. So if I earn $500 a week or $1,000 a week, whatever it may be for a person, I need to know how to astutely use that money for something that is going to bring me evolution. But I could waste $500 or $600 of that $1,000 into something that is actually going to dull me, numb me, and bring misery into my body. And I won't question it because I'm not free to question it as a result of the numbingness that I'm buying for myself. I'm actually buying my own numbness.
Well, we used to think a good night out was spending $250, $300 on drugs and alcohol, and that would be in one night. And that was a good night out. But what I'm hearing you saying is that if you actually provide a service to people that enriches them, that grows them, then the money that they've invested returns. Because if I invest in something that evolves me, and then that gives me the fullness to feel as though I can go on and make a product or service that can serve others, then it's almost like it's an ongoing effect of evolutionary growth to businesses. And this is what I see has happened around universal medicine. So universal medicine has people come and they do courses and workshops, but they take what they learn from that and they bring greater service to other people. So it's almost like a expansive model. Whereas on the flip side, you can get products and services that actually degrade the person, that they actually rob the person. And so is this what you're talking about when you're talking about if we understand how business, like that God is the master of business? Is it that evolutionary expansion?
Yeah, when universal medicine, the business model is studied, you'll see that we have created, in effect, the economy of the future, in the sense that people are earning money but are wisely using that money in the sense that they can develop with that money with themselves as a person, their family, of course, and their extended family and their friends, but also give back to the community in a way that greed is no longer the crux and the centerpiece. It's an ability to be cohesive and collaborative in the whole. So we've established something that we can call a futuristic economy. It's a very, very powerful study once it becomes available to all.
I recall working, I work alongside to this day other graphic designers, other web designers, and they do similar things that I do. And there isn't that element of competition because there's that sense that we're all playing a part and each of our expression is a needed part. And so that is also something that's rather evolutionary, to be able to work side by side, even with people that are offering the same services as you, and know that everyone plays a part. That kind of completely floors the current setup, the dog-eat-dog capitalist kind of environment.
Yeah, we need to understand, just on a very basic level, that we need to grow graphic design and not compete against each other. So if more people can see the beautiful service or servitude that graphic design can bring, then the key for graphic designers is to promote graphic design, but not to compete against each other. Because the moment you compete against each other, you are downplaying graphic design, because there's always going to be someone that's going to degrade it as a result of whatever is going on for them. So first and foremost, grow the product. But at the base of that, at the foundation of that, is you have to have a product that truly evolves people. It's not about graphic design for the sake of graphic design because somebody wants to be a graphic designer and therefore make money out of something that's what they're there to do. That would be selfish. The graphic design needs to be a medium through which you are helping society grow and evolve. If the product cannot do that, then we shouldn't have that product.
We would lose a lot of products.
Well, just on that, before you take off wherever you're going to take off, we need to say that, yes, in the future there will be lots of products and lots of businesses that won't be around. And I'm not going to name them here because I'll get attacked for it, but they'll be simply, we will evolve, we will become far more intelligent, and we will see that we only need to produce that which is evolutionary and adding to the collectiveness that we truly come from. Anything else that is destructive or opposing or divisive will simply not be part of our economies going forward.
Which makes sense to our moving forward as an entire race of beings as one, because that divisiveness, you see how it's coming out more and more how much problems that causes, and it's becoming more obvious. So, years ago, smoking was recommended as a way to relax by doctors, and now we're very aware of what smoking does. Big sugar is becoming more and more a thing that we are getting wise to. But what we look at in nearly every industry is a level of corruption, because it's like we're seeing through the veil to the drivers of those industries. And so with that reformation of whatever industry it is, it's also going to be looking at what drives it. So with the sugar industry, it would be greed, and that would be in a lot of different industries. So is that where we also have to go to start to look at how we change the shape of industry?
Yeah, I used the word reformation, and in the reforming of how we go forward will be the necessary cleaning out of that which does not belong. So we need to understand exactly what industry is and what economy should be. And at the moment it's a free for all. So if you can produce, it's based on supply and demand. So if you've got a supply and there's a demand for it, who cares what the supply is so long as the demand is there? And that was the case for lots of things. But what you're adding is that maybe we are being lied to about the quality of certain supplies, and therefore the demand would not be there if we knew the truth of what the supply was. And use a great example of the cigarette and nicotine and the addiction that those products occurred. And yes, the medical lobby was bought, perhaps a lot of money were paid to them to promote it, and now they'll be the first to say that it's not good for you. And that turnaround has only occurred in the last 50 to 70 years. And we've got to remember that once upon a time you could not take a cigarette company to court and win, and now you can easily win because it's common knowledge that cigarette smoking is bad for your health. So too will be with sugar and lots of other products that are currently available. It's not for me to challenge that now. It's a natural progression, it's a natural evolution that humanity will slowly get to. Some products are obvious, like cigarette smoking, and other products will be held on to for a bit longer, but they too will be exposed. And that may mean no farming of certain products and no production of certain other products, and that's the way to go. And in the end, it's not about culling economy, it's about growing economy so that we can all be, so that we can have an economy that is actually contributing to our evolution.
But there's a deeper honesty that we have to go to with the supply and demand thing, because the cigarettes, we know they're still harmful, but they're still an industry in this world. So while it's like we know that there's harm, but how is it that industry still exists? What is it about people that we continue to buy that product?
Well, first and foremost, it's important that we don't eradicate the availability of cigarettes if there is still a demand for it. I'm all for allowing free will, even though I'll say that I would never smoke or encourage anyone to smoke. But if that's their choice, they should be given that choice, and those products should be there and made available. So long as we're not lied to, so long as a person is free to make the choice, so long as we're not given an advertisement where we're puffing on a cigarette and we're relaxing, that's fine. I'm all for that, and I'm not here to prevent that, and I'm not anti that at all. We must be given free choice, so long as we're not lied to. So what we need to understand is that eventually, if our society is using the intelligence of the body, there will not be need for cigarette smoking, which is really in effect a person developing a relationship with a product that is their trusty friend. It becomes a habit that they can go to as their trusty friend. And if they have fantastic relationships, if they have truly fantastic relationships and truly honoring of each other in the body, the cigarette simply won't make sense to the body, because in effect you cannot hide that you are smoking something that isn't harmful for the body. So you would never want to do harm to something that you love, and that's your own body.
You mentioned something interesting before about it's not about prohibition, because it's also part of our evolution to have that choice and to feel whether we are ready to make a choice to care for ourselves. So it's not about limiting all the things that harm people in the world. But you spoke about it being important that there is that honesty there, there's that transparency there, so that there is true choice. When we get to that point where the true choice is there, what then do we have to go to look at as human beings as to why we're still making the choices that might harm us?
There's a big question here, and we need to understand what the ageless wisdom has been teaching for a long time. And that is that the human being is made up of an etheric spirit that chose incarnation and therefore developed for itself a body. The body itself, though, is made of intelligent particles that don't belong to the spirit but belong to the universe. And therefore the particles that make up our physical body are actually super intelligence. In fact, they're more intelligent than the spirit in its current form, until it goes back to its soul, of course. So, and that's the subject of another interview, I'm sure. But what we need to understand is that no human being has been able to explain why intelligent people choose to harm themselves. And we've had doctors and healthcare workers, we have biologists, we have nutritionists, dietitians, naturopaths that smoke cigarettes, for example, or drink alcohol, or excessively eat too much, or whatever it is. And the reason I name them is not to be critical or judgmental, but to understand that they have studied the body more than the average person. They know inside out how the cells work, how cell mutations and regeneration and everything else that works, down from the mitochondria, down to platelets in the body. They understand the body and its workings. They understand the tenderness and the preciousness of the alveoli in our lungs. They understand everything about the body. They understand the preciousness and the filtering service that the liver and the spleen bring to the body, for example, if we were to talk about alcohol and what it does to the body. But even with that understanding, even with that intelligence, they can still binge, they can still drink too much alcohol, they can still eat too much food, and some of them, or a lot of them at one stage, were all smoking cigarettes. So that shows us not only that we're not using whole body mindedness, but that there is a character running the show that is not in accord with what nature is, or what within true intelligence is. Because if the body is saying, this is not right for me, just because you can functionally carry on for 20 or 30 years doing the harm, doesn't mean it's intelligent. And so where is intelligence fitting into this? And that's a bigger question. So we need to understand that there is a character And until we do, we won't heal any of this, by the way. That there is a character that is running the show that is not true. In other words, not true to the body it belongs to, and it's also not the truth of who we truly are.
I know that character. So that character is when you go straight to the pantry, something might be coming up for you emotionally, and instead of sitting there and feeling it, it's to the pantry, open the jar of nuts, could be cookies, whatever it is. There's that straight to going to numb it in some way, and there's a medication in that, and it works to a certain degree, in that there's those moments of numbness. Doesn't work in the long term, but is this the kind of show we're running? Is this how we're at the mercy of avoiding what's going on for us?
The character is, of course, the etheric spirit that incarnates to become what we call a human being, until such time that we understand that you can have a soul incarnation, and that will be a different type of human being. And that's our evolution. But I'm not free of that character myself. And once upon a time, I was, the pantry journeyman as well, and or where the fridge door was a revolving door that would never stop. And we all come from that. But we need to understand that as and I'm often asked, how do you get to where I got to, or where I am today? And that is simply just developing a relationship with my body and developing an intelligence that makes sense to it. And so as you develop a relationship with your body more and more, that character cannot have the freedom it appears to have. So it wouldn't venture into the pantry or to the fridge simply just to quell itself from what it's trying to saturate, which is the misery that it can't escape. Because simply, the more you listen to your body and the more you work with it, the more love you will have with it. And therefore that changes your diet, not that you actually enter into a change of diet. So the body educates you by not having the impulse to harm itself, rather than the mind saying, I'm not going to harm myself. And that changes everything. That changes, the whole thing gets turned upside down, because dieting should come from the body not needing, rather than you saying, I don't need it.
So that's an intelligence from the body. And that's almost like it's health from the inside out, isn't it? It's a different way of looking at it, instead of an imposition from the mind onto the body and a dictation. It comes from that feeling in the body. But this turns things on its head in more than one way, because when I first heard you speak about the spirit in the way that you do, I was like, but spiritualism is the pinnacle of enlightenment. To be spiritual and to know the spirit is to be enlightened. This is kind of, it throws a lot of things out in terms of people's commonly held beliefs about the spirit. Can you tell us a bit more about what the role of spiritualism in our lives?
Well, we need to reduce and produce everything down to its simplest form. We've been lied to about sugar, we've been lied to about many food products, we've been lied to about alcohol, and we've been lied to about cigarettes. So why not say we've been lied to about the word spiritualism? It's no different. And we need to understand that spiritualism is simply not what the esoteric has been saying for a long time is part of our evolution. We need to understand that we come from a soul. And that's not news, that's not new. Pythagoras talked about it, and before him the Egyptians talked about it in different words and different terms. But they talked about a true higher quality that we come from, and that there was definitely a deviation or a separation or a lesser quality that was to date running the show, that was not part of the true higher quality that we are come from. Now there's been words put to the higher quality and the lesser quality, and in this instance we understand that the true high quality is the soul, and the lesser quality is what we call the etheric spirit. The problem with this conversation is that there is in the word spirit a truth as well. So the Spirit of God, the Spirit of Christ, the Divine Spirit, the Holy Ghost, they're all references to the fact that Spirit is superbly divine and very high with regard to its vibration in the universe. But those who understand those terms and understand them from the point of view of energy and vibration and quality thereof, and their subsequent, will also understand that there is also a character that is in deviation of that quality. And because it's etheric and not physical, it's hard to catch and it's hard to identify. But the most difficult part about being human being is that we are human by the creation of this etheric character. And our evolution here is to arise ourselves higher than it through our bodies. The only way to defeat the spirit is through our bodies. And once we do that, we arise to the quality of the soul. And that's when we start to get what we call a much more universal form of mind that can bring us an intelligence that understands ourselves differently, so that we're not at the mercy of this character that is abusing physicality and using it for its own identification and pleasures.
We talk about, sometimes we look at the state of humanity and people say, you know, like humans are like a cancer on the earth. Is this a result of that deviation, and is this why we don't appear to fit in the animal kingdom? Like, there's no other species that builds buildings, and there's also no other species that, you know, takes drugs or smokes a cigarette. So we don't fit in the makeup. Is this because of this character, and is this unique to human beings?
We don't come from the animal kingdom, and I've written about this, and you know, it'll be scorned at and attacked and whatever. But eventually, you know, those who believe in Adam and Eve are no different to those who believe in the evolution of us coming from animals. But we don't. The gap is too wide. It's unexplainable. There's not enough bodies left behind to prove or to have evidence of the gap of where we come from. And what we need to understand, as I've written before, and I think you're quoting here, is it makes no sense that we can evolve to the level that we've evolved and still be harming ourselves. It's impossible. That level of intelligence should not be harming itself. And so if we understand that we have a wily character, an etheric spirit that is here to be in indulgence with its own creation and its ability to create, but it also has a misery in itself because it is separation from its soul and it can't quell that misery, then it makes very much sense why we self-harm.
When you talk about that gap, if I can just take you back, so are you saying that there isn't enough evidence of
Neanderthal
man?
man.
Neanderthal man. Like we've perhaps found remains of a few, but where are the millions? And where do these characters that are running the show truly come from? Because it's never made sense to me that we came from the mud. But there's also a certain harmony in nature. There's a certain order in nature that we seem to eschew as human beings, and there's the argument that is due to our evolution as a species into free will, into having the ability to harm ourselves, as if that is a choice that comes with, like, it's a greater responsibility than an animal, say, may have. What do you say to that?
If I may answer the question without necessarily answering the specifics of the question that you're asking, but answering it on a different level. And please take me back if I haven't done it. And that is that the teachings of our origins are rejected simply because they highlight the lack of responsibility and the force of irresponsibility. It's a bit like when you start to teach the science of reincarnation. It's all about responsibility. And the reason why we don't like reincarnation in its scientific form, not in its in the current form that it's paraded around the world, but in its true scientific form, it highlights the fact that we are responsible for the energetic imprints that we add to the realm that we live in, and we reincarnate to experience those energetic imprints simply because we have to correct them and make sure that the energetic imprint we add to our realm, and by that to the universe, has to be in accordance to the harmony that the whole order works in. And so it's a bit like when you start to teach evolution in its truth, and you understand that we are already superbly intelligent well before we came here, and that we are far more intelligent than the current level of intelligence of the human being, then we start to say, well, how come we've had wars? How come we do things that self-harm? Why can't we get on? And so we start then to lean towards the level of irresponsibility that we are choosing. And in order to avoid the level of irresponsibility, it's easier to say that we come from Adam and Eve, or that we evolved from the animals. Because if we don't have those two things, if we don't have those two factors contributing, then we have to deal with the fact of the irresponsibility that we are choosing knowingly.
So explain that to me a bit more in terms of saying, you know, we come from the apes as a way to be irresponsible. Is that because I can say my genetic makeup is not, the choices I make are based on, you know, an animalistic way of being, so therefore I don't have to take a high responsibility for it? Is that the kind of responsibility you're talking about?
First and foremost, I embrace evolution from an animal kingdom in its true science. In other words, that our particles are part of the animal kingdom. Secondly, I embrace Adam and Eve as a symbolic story. So I don't discount them from that point of view. But if it wasn't for us, we would have more gorillas and more chimpanzees in the world. So we actually squeezed out their environment to the point where, you know, they are becoming extinct eventually, okay? And they probably will. But their numbers have reduced as a result of that. So what we need to understand is that we don't have this level of chimpanzees and gorillas, and then these millions of Neanderthals left over, you know, in the crust of the earth, buried, and then suddenly the human beings. So we only have a few Neanderthals. So what did we do? Just spend all that time as gorillas, then made a huge leap into Neanderthal man, and then spent maybe a decade as a Neanderthal or one life, and then we go, oh, that doesn't work either. Now we better be human beings. It just doesn't make sense. And it draws no different to a belief in Adam and Eve than it does from a religious person to an evolutionist, if we can call it that. So both parties are drawing on a belief. And even though the evolutionists say we're scientific, we've got the proof, and Adam and Eve is just simply a fable story, they're both drawing on belief, because the evolutionist is drawing on a very big gap that they can't explain, and therefore are believing into something that they need to hold on to be able to explain their journey. The key is to not argue about this. It's not about arguing. If we argue, where are we going to get to? We have a problem. Humanity is at war. There's a war with each other. We haven't not had a war for a long time, if you have a look at the fact of war. And we also have a situation where our society is in tension, aggression. There's an enormous amount of war if we look at hate speech, for example, on the internet. That's still a form of war. Hate speech is no different. What are we're firing word weapons instead of missiles and bullets. So it's exactly the same thing. So if we start to address the fact that, no, if Adam and Eve were divine, we wouldn't be doing what we were doing. If we evolve from the animal kingdom, we don't evolve to be at a very intelligent level of aggression with each other. We would be much smarter than that. So we need to understand that, first and foremost, let's not argue. Let's look at the fact that there is an enormous amount of irresponsibility, and that in itself will answer all the questions.
So arguing over our history, when we arrive at a point where there's a lack of harmony between us, is irrelevant, really. But those arguments are, especially the evolution argument, when it's stamped with science, and we see this today, when it's stamped with that label science, it's almost then goes beyond our ability to look discerningly at what is being said. And we have a problem in today's age in which a lot of science is sponsored, but by virtue of that label science, it almost gets a ticket of this is the authority. And is this any different than a few hundred years ago when religion used that card and said it's the word of God, so that's the way it is? Is there a similar thing running the show that blinds us to looking beyond what's being said at the actual state of play?
Rebecca, it's been touted, and with some truth, that the new dark age is the science card. It's the modern new dark age, playing the science card. Science says so. We need to understand that sponsored science identifies the fact that there is a form of science that some commercial enterprises and vested interests need to have as a form of proof to qualify or pass a certain governmental legislation that allows that pharmaceutical product or medicinal product to get to where it needs to get to in order for it to be consumable, available for us, and therefore qualify for some government assistance. That's fine, but we can't use that science and call it science for everything, because that science is very finite, and its way of achieving that result is finite. Science was discovered so that it understands or teaches us that we are forever discovering something. The moment you discover something, there is another level of discovery. Quantum physics has that innocence, in the sense that as it reaches one point of amazing discovery, it opens itself up to the possibility that there is more. In other words, one great discovery says that we're only just scratching the surface. And science needs to go back to that. Science needs to go back to the fact that it is not finite, and that each new discovery is only there to discover the next bit that's going to be each and new discovery. And we need to understand that. But to cast a blanket over the society and say science says, and to leave it at that, that's limiting, and that's a dark age. We don't need that. It's shown that it hasn't worked. For 400 or 500 years, humanity was held back. And if we're going to repeat that, so be it, if that's the choice of everybody. But let's not say we haven't been warned.
Because this actually brings it back to where we started, which was talking about business. So if science is coming from business and business interests, and those business interests don't have the whole at heart, then that science is going to be flawed. So the studies will be created to prove that, the coffee has antioxidants in it and is good for our health, or the chocolate has antioxidants in it. And the proof will be created in order to justify the industry. But when we go back to looking at the way that we run industry, then that kind of gets exposed as not being true science. And so we have to look at, then business and science become the same thing. Science is expansive, it's open, it's curious, it's forever looking to improve, expand on how we can be more interconnected, and that is the nature of business as well.
The very word science is beautiful. God himself is science. And what you're talking about is the fact that the true meaning of the word science is being reduced. And it's been reduced by vested interest. And we talked about a form of economy that is serving the collective. And I'm pro decisions, I'm pro free will, I'm pro people making choices. So the idea is, if we're going to have a product that harms, let's let everybody know that it harms. If it has a benefit that somebody thinks is a benefit, so if we choose coffee and caffeine and we say that it helps us because of the fact that it helps us get over exhaustion, then so be it. But let's not do some controlled group trials that tell us that coffee is actually good for you. it's actually not good for you at all. But if a person decides that that's how they want to stimulate their body, to get action or to get motivated or to get active simply because they're exhausted, they should have every right to go out and consume coffee. I'm pro that. You know, it's a delicious drinking drink, and you can tailor it and make it very, very personal to your own taste, and that's okay. I don't drink coffee myself, but I used to. But we can't avoid the fact that it is helping us out of exhaustion. So these controlled trial testing and double blind blah blah that they do is simply there just to promote a point and to foster the economy and to foster the commerciality of a certain product. Let's do away with that. Let's just tell the truth. It's a product that helps us escape our exhaustion. And if people want to drink it, that's fine. But let's not promote the good when it's actually not good to artificially stimulate the body. And that's what we're talking about here.